Zero Trust, Step 5, Monitor and Maintain. Welcome to Threat Talks. My name is Lieuwe Koning, and here from headquarters at Ontoit, we bring you the next episode of Threat Talks. And the subject of today is the monitor part of Step 5 of Zero Trust. Let's get on to it.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
In this series about Zero Trust, I'm joined again by my dear colleague Rob Maas. He is the field CTO of Ontoit, and his job is to make sure that Zero Trust is everywhere in a nutshell. Right, Rob? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
We've been talking about the 5 steps of Zero Trust. Let's briefly recap those 5 steps. The 5 steps that you need to iteratively go through if you want to go towards a Zero Trust environment. First step was
define your protectors.
What does that mean?
We look at our assets that we have running, and we define what's really important to protect. And then we define them as a protect service because they need protection. And we also gather some metadata with them. So who's the owner of this protect service? How important is it to the business? And we will use that, all that metadata we will use in step 5. So today we're going to discuss how that's any helpful.
Step 1 was an important step for step 5. Yeah. Okay, so we know what to protect after step 1. And then we get to step 2. That's map the transaction flows. What do we do?
Correct. So once we have a few protect services, we are going to define which protect service needs to communicate with each other. So we make kind of a table or a matrix where we show, hey, this protect service needs to communicate with the other protect service, and if we are allowing it or not.
Oh, okay, and once we know those 2 things, then we go to step 3, which is architect the Zero Trust environment.
Yeah, correct. That's also a really important step because then we bring Zero Trust really into the operation. And we're going to define what security controls should be implemented, and we will, of course, implement them to make it effective. And that's what we do in step 3. The nice thing here is that it's also the allocation of the budget. So if you have a security budget, once we have protect services and we know how important they are, we also know where we can put the most controls in place and spend our budget.
You can spend your budget wisely by applying it to those protect services that you...
Yeah, so if you have a really important protect service, you will probably spend more than, for example, on your guest network, which is also can be seen as a protect service, which only needs, in most times, isolation.
Yeah, so then we have the diagrams, the architecture, we have the firewalls, we have the endpoint protection, everything in house, and then
step 4.
That we talked about last 2 episodes because we had to split that as well because it's a big subject. What's that about?
Yeah, then we create a Zero Trust policy. So we have all these controls, but now we need to create a policy around them. How should they behave, and who or what needs or gets access to those protect services? So that's what we do in step 4, and we mainly do that by the Kipling method, which we discussed the last time. So to make very granular policies on who or what is allowed, but also the configuration on, for example, your endpoint solution.
The step where we really operationalize Zero Trust.
Exactly.
This is where the actual deny rule is being created, or the allow rule is not created.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. We're done because everything is set up, and there's still step 5, monitor and maintain.
Yeah, so that's unfortunately what a lot of people think. So we have implemented the controls, and then we're done. But step 5, monitor and maintain, it starts with the monitoring part, is really important because the more controls we put in place and the better our policy will become, the more logs we will get. And the logs will tell us what's going on in the environment and where we need to give some attention to a protect service to improve it, or maybe that there's already someone inside the network and we can detect it.
Yeah. Always validate what's going on. So we're talking about the monitoring part right now. That's what we're going to elaborate a little bit more on it. Next time we're going to talk about the maintain, how we keep everything as good as it already is, right?
Correct.
Now you say many people forget step 5. We also sometimes see the opposite, that organizations start with step 5, MDR services, for example.
Yeah, so that's, I think, at least that's my assumption, step 5, if you really look at it from a distance, it sounds very easy. You just collect all the logs and then see if you need to take action somewhere. And that's also what we see a lot with MDR solutions. So we throw everything in the SIEM, for example, or in a data lake, and then we hope to find something in that might be malicious and can take action upon. But it's very cumbersome. You get a lot of logs. It not necessarily tells you anything that's going on in the environment, and it has nothing to do with protection at all. Well, with Zero Trust, we really want to have protection. We want to prevent bad things from happening. So there's the difference. We already put protection in place, and now we're going to monitor. We're going to check if everything is still healthy, if we need to take action.
Yeah, so step 5, a large portion of it is MDR. It can be implemented by MDR today, at least in today's technology. Yeah, we'll see how this evolves later, because the beauty of Zero Trust is it's been there around for over a decade and still the same. But the way we implement every step is different.
The strategy is still the same, but you get new security controls, new security measures, new IDs around it. So that's evolving, but I think the strategy is really strong because it's just telling you, hey, this is Zero Trust. With the 5 steps, we have a very pragmatic approach to implement it. And I think that will stay around for much longer.
Yeah. But starting with MDR, does that, you just said you gain no protection. I mean, right? And I've talked to CISOs, and they said, yeah, well, we at some point we suffered from a breach, and then we were attacked. We had no clue what happened.
No, it's always reactive. So that's
and then they implemented MDR, and then it got breached again, and they said, well, now we know exactly where it happened, but still got breached.
Yeah, but
this is the effect of MDR.
Yeah,
right?
There's no P in it from protection or prevention. It's really detection and response. So you're always late to the game.
Yeah. So MDR, everything we talk about on step 5 right now, really should be in collaboration with all kinds of preventative measures.
Yeah,
right?
You should really do the first 4 steps and then go to step 5.
Well, it might be a nice starting point if you already have like firewalls and you need to make sense out of log files. You can.
Yeah, of course. So MDR is not completely useless. So you still have detection and response, but it gets way more valuable if you really go with Zero Trust.
Okay. One of the mantras of Zero Trust, John Kindervak, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and it's like inspect and log all traffic.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so that's one of the 4 principles of Zero Trust. So that's also indicating that monitoring is really, really key because you need to know what's going on in your network. And once we create these smaller protectors, we can we get a lot of information, a lot of logs about every protector. Hey, I see this going on, that going on. So your security controls will really inform you, hey, this is going on. And that's because we inspect everything that's going into a protect service or what's running on a machine. So we get a lot of value.
And when you're talking about logging, what kind of logs are we talking about?
It can be traffic logs. If you implement your security controls correctly, then you will also get a lot of events because that's where security controls are good at.
So events like IPS or malware detection, SQL injection,
exactly. Preventing, maybe blocked a brute force attack, downloaded malware, which can indicate there's a patient 0 in your network.
User suddenly locked in a different country.
Yeah, or the user executed an executable that's normally not being executed by the user, or he announced the script, or visited a certain website, or did a large file upload or download. All kinds of indicators that there might be something.
Does it make sense to simply log everything as much as possible? And I understand that the SIM vendors will want you to do so because they will sell more hard drives eventually. But is it really a good idea?
Well, you need to log everything. Depends also how long do you want to keep it. I think that there's a big difference. You don't have to keep all your loggings for 7 years, which some people might argue with. But your events, you definitely want to take a look at.
Events like the security connotated events, what you mean then?
Yeah. So your logging is more for if there is an event and you want to do a root cause, then that logging is helpful. But if you have that you should have that event immediately when it happened or near real time. So then you're logging.
So you're talking about logs and events. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, so a log is just, this is everything I've seen. And an event is, hey, I detected something.
Could be a process was started or a button was pressed on the website. Those are logs. Right?
Yeah, or IP address X accessed IP address B because a firewall only knows IP addresses.
And then when does it become an event?
If in that communication, in that session, for example, a brute force was detected, and the firewall will say, hey, I saw a brute force attack. That's an event, but the logging is just traffic from A to B.
Okay, so what you're saying is logging is great for investigations and all that, but it's impossible to store. Traffic logs also impossible to store for forever. But the events where we actually see actual security control has made that information into something bigger, more rich, that you keep for longer.
Yeah,
as a
so there's one side path here. That's what we're going to discuss later. Logging can help. Once we do the maintenance, or when we go to the maintain part, but on the monitoring part, you should really focus on events. So you make sure that your security controls are implemented correctly, and then you get a lot of events, and you should judge every single event.
Now, almost everybody will tell you this is so much data, we're never going to respond to everything.
Yeah, it is. But the benefit here is
alert fatigue.
Yeah, they call it alert fatigue. So there are so many events that the SOC doesn't know what to do anymore. So that's basically they are getting a fatigue and don't know how to handle these events. But in Zero Trust, we have the benefit that in step 1, we define a lot of metadata, which like the owner, how important it is, what kind of protect service it is, what data is involved, all those information. And that's now really helpful. So if you get an event, for example, a firewall event will only tell you the IP addresses. But once you translate those IP addresses to what protect service they belong to, you really know, hey, now I have an event coming from what Active Directory going to the CRM system. So you get all that content, that context that we created. So the event itself is content. It's just, hey, I saw, for example, a brute force attack going from IP address 1 to IP address 2.
Yeah.
And then
itself could be really bad. It could also be reconnaissance, right? And there's not much you can do against.
Exactly. So we don't know yet. Even if it is blocked, you want to find out, do I need to pay attention to it or not? And then adding context that we defined in step 1 by adding the correct protect services to the event, we get a lot of information. So we know now how important it is. If it was the guest network, maybe we can simply ignore it. But if it was your CRM system or any other important system, you probably want to investigate, hey, what's going on here?
But your example of the brute force attack, can you name an example when it is actually something that you shouldn't really pay attention to? And another example where you really want to, so the same event happens in different contexts, but your response is differently. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So do you have an example for that?
Yeah, so the firewall says, I saw a brute force attack from IP address 1 to IP address 2. If you mapped protect service to it and IP address 1 was the internet, for example, going to, let's say, your webmail, because there's a username password before you can access your email.
It happens all the time. Everybody's trying to get in.
If you put something on the internet, people will scan for it, will do brute force attack. So in this case, you could say this is an event. It was blocked. So the brute force attack was blocked. I can safely ignore it because the firewall did its job. We can safely ignore this. However, if we map another different protect service to it, so the same event, but it turns out, hey, this was the Active Directory going to the webmail, then we might want to investigate.
That's really weird.
Yeah, this is weird. Even if it is blocked, we want to investigate because this should not happen. And then I think you have two outcomes. One is there is already someone in your network and try to move laterally around and see what other systems can I access. That means you want to take action immediately. It still can also be a false positive that, for example, a service account that's needed to let the webmail environment run properly has an expired password. And by logging in constantly, because this is a service account used by a process, it looks like a brute force attack. And that's a false positive, which you also want to fix, but there's no harm there.
Okay. Yeah, now clear. I think this actually shows how lateral movement can be stopped by segmenting and putting multiple barriers. Because in your example, it's not necessarily the web portal that's being brute forced. That's at risk there. Well, that's the target. But the real problem is in AD in your example, right? So that's when we've missed it everywhere, then we can see it as a source of the next step, and putting the step 1 context in place helps you do so. Now, we've been doing this at Onto It, of course, for 20 years, and we build a lot of automation to do so. I mean, because we have a concept like IOG, for example, indicator of good, as opposed to indicator of compromise. I think that plays a role here. Can you?
Yeah. So what I told earlier about the attack from the internet to your webmail, we call that an indicator of good if it is blocked, because the firewall, the security measure in this case, did a good job. It blocked the attack. Then the indicator of compromise would be, hey, we know definitely there's something going on, and we are absolutely sure that it is wrong. Maybe a malware download on a system that was detected by an EDR system. If that was on an important protect service like CRM or HR, ERP, etc., then we know we need to take immediate action. That's really an IOC, because we know this is bad, we need to take action. Then in between is everything that we don't know for sure. So like the example with the brute force attack, coming from Active Directory in our previous example to the web mail environment, we cannot know for sure, based upon the content and the context we have, if it is an actual attacker or wrongly configured or an expired password on a service account.
In both cases, you want to know.
We want to investigate, and that's what we call typically an unknown event, and that's really needs to be addressed by a SOC engineer.
There's not many technology that use this philosophy. Actually, the reason we have this, we're now very happy with it, because we can put it everywhere, is because there was nothing in the market, so we ended up building it ourselves. But it's still not common practice to
No, that's because most people will still focus on the content they get from the security solution, and then it's really hard to make good informed decisions. So what you typically see, if there's already any automation, there are very basic rules saying, okay, everything that's blocked, we will just throw away and ignore. But still, blocked events can tell you a lot on what's going on in the environment.
Yeah, and the latest development, of course, is to put AI in the mix, and then the job of AI is to filter out the right events. Because what you're essentially saying is that if we have brute force attacks in your example, most of the, like 99.9% or so of those events are useless, or at least expect indicators of good, expected to happen, right? But you're searching for this one thing, and by looking at each and every one of them every time, I guess then you filter out the stuff that you shouldn't look at, the indicator of good, and then what remains is the stuff you want to look at. AIs do the opposite. They try to somehow find an algorithm to find the bad stuff out of it.
Yeah, and that's really hard, I think, if there's no context. So the context is really key here. If you have no context, then I think it's impossible, because systems work on based off IP addresses. Maybe
AI helps, but isn't certainly not the silver bullet without that data.
Not at this moment, no.
Yeah, who knows when we have general super intelligence.
If we find a way to feed the AI with all the protectors information, maybe
us humans could figure it out. So eventually AIs also will.
Exactly.
So we'll see. Well, future is very interesting. Anything else on automation here that we should do?
Well, on automation, so you should have automation, because the sheer amount of events you get is
should you inspect every event with automation?
Yes.
Yeah, you should. So this is. But you're saying this, but almost nobody is doing that.
No, a lot of I would say traditional solutions will say, okay, we'll have all the events or all the logs in one big box, and then I'm going to filter out what looks interesting.
Yeah.
And I think you should flip that around. You should inspect every event, because the security controls are there for a reason. They are security controls, so you might expect from them that they will throw up good events that you can work with. And if not, then you maybe have the wrong tool or wrongly configured. But you should inspect every event that's being created, because it tells you something that's going on in your environment.
This is a big task for many people, because the SIMs don't do this, even AI powered.
Yeah, typically they don't do it. So you need to have automation here, and you need to have the context that helps the automation. Without the context, you're doomed to fail here.
Yeah. Okay. There's also a thing called rules of engagement as part of automation. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you get these kinds of information and you have this context, then you can also decide where you want to have an automated response. So you can, the first part of automation is, hey, this ticket needs to be investigated by a SOC engineer or not, or it's an IOC, or an unknown. But the other part is, hey, I know this is an IOC. What should I do as a response? And you can then also make rules on protections, how important they are, for example. And then let's say you find a process that's known as ransomware, that's being launched in a protect service, maybe your ERP system. Then you might decide, okay, if something is launched and it's being that critical, then I want to isolate the whole protect service from the rest of the network, so that I can reduce the blast radius.
A kill switch.
It's kind of a kill switch and an automated by rules of engagements. You can also find a middle ground there, that you say, okay, if that happens, then the automation will prepare everything and will send the SOC engineer kind of a button or a link. Hey, I found this, I want to do this. Can you please agree? But then you need to act fast, because ransomware
that takes time.
Spreads.
Yeah, because we can typically, detection can be sub-second even today. Not every technology, but then it would be a pity then to wait for 15 minutes.
Exactly. It depends a bit on the maturity of your organization, if you are ready to do the full automation.
You build a lot of those kill switches for customers, huh? I know that for some reason.
Yep.
What's the hesitation with organization? Because it's not that everybody does this. Why not?
No, I think the function in itself, I think, is a very good marketing tool to show why you should do zero trust, because you will find out in a lot of organizations they don't have segmented the network correctly. And if you want to block something completely, you need to block everything that it's able to reach. And that can be a very big loss radius.
So you make a kill switch that blocks off a segment, a whole protect service, and it turns out that the protect service isn't really segmented, and therefore by blocking it, you block half the network because it shares network.
Exactly. The impact can then be very big. So you need to kind of have a maturity, absolutely sure that it is segmented properly, that your context that you get to the event is right before you can do the full automation.
Yeah. So it makes it very obvious to organizations why they should do better in step 1 actually, or step 3.
Step 3.
Where you segment.
Yeah, step 1 and 3 combined. Yeah.
And that's what you mean by marketing, help the CISO or
it really shows them. If you show, hey, if you would what always is nice to do is pick one of the most important things they have, so their core process, the core business process, and then say, okay, on what IP is it run, or multiple IPs,
APMs or the web shop.
Exactly, and then you type in the APM and you do the kill switch, the blast radius calculation, and then you say, okay, but it would block this part of the network, and then they are going, okay, we should better. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is it easy to deploy? Are organizations comfortable automatically blocking attacks like this? Once you're done?
It's easy to deploy, and I think organization needs to grow into it to have the confidence that the automation works and does the right thing, and also need to accept that sometimes it's better to have kind of a loss of productivity, but prevented a whole ransomware attack instead of waiting a bit longer and then being too late.
Yeah, because security equipment will sometimes break. I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you don't have a firewall, you will never suffer from a firewall outage, right?
Yeah. Everything, nothing is perfect. I would say in this case.
No, but not having a firewall, obviously, well, at least to us, obviously, is much worse than this big.
It's normally not a risk you want to take, and it's the same, for example, with automation. Do I want to take the risk by doing it manually and maybe being too late? But prevent automated downtime? Or do I want to automate it and then maybe have a slight chance that is being automated at the wrong time or the wrong IP address?
Clear. Rules of engagement, you mentioned there's one system that detects something, for example, your log system. And then there's an action in maybe another control. It might be that one control sees the data and another control, then you need rules of engagement. Could you argue that rules of engagement are also inherent in, so many people are already using it. For example, an AV solution or MDR solution, when it detects malware, it will immediately block that process. So in a sense, that is a rule of engagement within the control itself, like really a shortcut of rule.
Yeah, correct. And also firewalls nowadays can do this. And for endpoints, I think we're at the stage that people will trust it. So they say, okay, it's fine that the endpoint solution will stop the process. I'm perfectly fine with it because the impact, of course, is really predictable. Is that solely that endpoint? But on firewalls, for example, where we can do the same. Hey, I see a malware download in a particular subnet or even to a particular endpoint. We don't often automate it yet, at least. But the capabilities are there. We should.
But why are people hesitant in doing it? Or is it just not knowing?
I think for firewalls, it's often not knowing. I think a lot of people still see a firewall as just network access control, and the last, I would say, even 10 years already, we gain a lot of layer 7 capabilities and a lot of automation in the firewalls, but it's not often used. Still, I see a lot of customers working with solely layer 4, as we call them, so source IP address and the destination and the ports, and not or barely looking at the application or what's actually in the data. Most modern firewalls are perfectly capable of finding a lot of
and
stuff
blocking
there. And blocking that.
Discussion: should we enable or put the IPS in blocking mode or in detection mode? And to me, it's a no-brainer that it's in protection mode. I mean, it's really bad stuff.
Yeah, it should always prevention first.
It's the best rule of engagement. Yeah. And the poor rule of engagement, the worst rule of engagement is, we got hacked, let's figure it out, right?
Yeah, but it should be
rule
prevention.
Of non-engagement.
It should be prevention first, and if it is then prevented and blocked, you should be informed by an event that you are going to inspect.
Very important step, this step number 5A, the monitoring part of it. Thank you very much for all those insights, Rob. And to you, thank you for tuning in to Threat Talks this time. This time was at the first part of step 5, and we have a final part of step 5. It's about maintain, and we'll do that next time when we're on this subject. Thank you very much for tuning in. Like us, we would appreciate that. And if you put a subscribe button, you will not miss that next episode. Once again, thank you. And from headquarters at Onto It, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Onto It Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.